Good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of the Rangers Rabble podcast. It's that time again. We've seen this movie before. Some actors have changed, but for the main, the key cast remains the same. There are no plot twists in what are this collection of Rangers disaster movies. There are no excuses, we just simply aren't good enough. No passion, no bottle, no quality. It's been 2 years since John Bennett said this was the greatest Rangers squad ever assembled. And since that point, we haven't won a league title, and he is conspicuous by his absence. The club demand everything from everyone, but as fans, do we get that back? We deserve better. Under the leadership of James Tavernier's captaincy, we are the ship HMS Titanic that keeps hitting the iceberg. The time for change is now. A mass clear-out is needed to cleanse years of repetitive failure. Rangers should be about winning multiple trophies and defending those trophies. Far too many have forgotten that. If you disagree, join us for your say by calling us on 0141 628 7237 when the lines open very shortly. Delighted to say joining me this evening are two people that never let you down. I'm joined tonight by a Scottish football guru, a Go Radio football contributor, and last-minute super sub, Connor. Connor, how are we?
A bit speechless with that intro, to be honest with you, David. That's I think Spielberg's got to be quite in his boots surely after that. No, all good, better than I was last night, that's for sure. So that's the bonus. And I mean, if I'm a Scottish football guru, I will take that all day long.
And also joining us this evening, found in the same places as Tav, Goldson and Borna when they're defending, all at sea, it's Big Mark. Mark, how are we?
Not bad at all, mate. How's yourself? All good?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. So let's get right into it. As I said, the phone lines will be open very shortly. So give us a call on 0141 628 7237 if you want to get anything off your chest. So let's start with the obvious from yesterday, Saturday. And John Lundstram. This is a guy who has flattered to deceive far too often in a Rangers jersey. He's had spells of obvious highs, but he's had far too many consistent lows in big games. Connor, would you agree with that?
I think over a piece, certainly this season, it's hard not to agree with it. As you say, flattered to deceive, really. I think he's had spells this season where he's stepped up a bit and you thought, oh, maybe he's starting to get back to the old John Lundstram, the Europa League Lundstram, who seems to be conspicuous by his absence in recent times. But, again, on Saturday, a big game, a season-defining game, and he lets everybody down. But we'll obviously get into the nuts and bolts here. But reality is, we get ourselves into a position where you're back in the game after he has given away a ridiculous own goal, and then he just absolutely moment of madness. You'd have to say. I said last night briefly that it reminded me of Scott Wright's red card against Aberdeen earlier on in the season. Where it was just that there was no rhyme or reason behind doing it. And I'm not saying this is the case, but it was almost as if did they want to get himself sent off, because you can't make tackles like that. And as I say, sadly for him, he's let the side down, and I find it hard. I hate saying this because I have been a fan of his since he came into the club, but I find it hard to see how the Rangers fans are going to be able to forgive him for that.
Mark, if we take John Lundstram in isolation here, since he came into the midfield for us, his old firm record stands at 2 wins in 14 starts. Now, normally in these games, it's the midfield battle that you have to win. And we haven't won a title since he's come into the side. He was seen as the long-term replacement for Steve Davis, but it hasn't quite worked for us. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think that probably what Connor said, he's blown hot and cold for probably his whole Rangers career. We've seen glimpses of a really good player. We've seen absolute disaster, like we seen at the weekend. Replacement for Davis, I think probably that's definitely a bridge too far for Lundstram. I don't think he's got the quality for one to replace somebody like Davis. I think that still really trying to figure out what is his position. Is he a holding midfielder? Is he one of these kind of quarterback midfielders that sit deep and start play and ping nice balls diagonals? And I still don't know. I don't know whether he's box to box. Don't think he's got the legs for it. Which is strange because I think at the start of the season he was the fittest when he won the bleep test. He was just baffles you. It really does baffle you. He's starting to become a bit of an enigma, and I think probably, and I would hope probably that this is going to be his last time you're going to see him. I think it will be an absolute travesty if this man starts on a cup final day. I really do. I think that he's done what he could. I don't know whether he's tried too hard at some points, or I really don't know. It's very, very hard to put your finger on what's went wrong, what's happened, and what kind of player he is. I'm slightly baffled by him. For me, he's definitely getting a contract extension. I believe that he's away to Turkey anyway, but just baffled. I think is probably the overriding thoughts on him. He's just a strange enigma of a player that has got some sort of a quality and then goes and lets himself down terribly in probably what was our most important game of the season for probably a long time. So for me, it's a mentality thing. You could probably argue that he tried to get himself sent off. And the other one was you're probably going to talk about it, but trying to blame somebody else for his own goal. I can't get my head around it. Just as I said,
I've got a call waiting.
About.
So we've got Chris and Falkirk on the line. Hi, Chris. What's your point this evening?
Hi, good afternoon. Good evening, gentlemen. It was just to say I've seen a few people on social media, etc., and that call for Clements' head, and I think that would be grossly the wrong thing to do. Now, he's not won an open match as of yet, but I think we don't want to go down the route of sacking managers every 6-7 months and end up like Watford, who have a conveyor belt of managers that they keep just sacking every 6 or 7 months. Now, I'll do worry for Clements if we lose this cup final due to what's happening just before the cup final with Walter's statue. I think that could just be the last straw for people if we were to lose that cup final. But I think there's a lot of dead wood there. You look at people like Cantwell, Goldson, Barisic, Lundstram, Scott Wright. The list could go on and on. I think it needs a good clear out. I think the manager's got to be given the time. He's got to be given the backings for somewhere. And hopefully it could turn this, because I just think going down this manager journey again, looking for another manager. You look at the candidates we had. Lampard, still known as Job. Muscat, he's that good. He can't get a job in Europe. Jensen's just been sacked out of Alkmaar. McInnes, he turned the job down before. And how good would he be at a club with an expectation of Rangers? I don't know. So a lot of the candidates that were in for before aren't exactly turning up trees either. So it just makes you wonder. Just stick with Clement and give him a couple of transfer windows and see what he could do from there.
Connor, what's your take on Chris's point?
Listen, I think Chris is right. Look, I think it's always the case, the raw emotion after you lose a big game. Clearly, too often we've had to experience that throughout the season, particularly a game on Saturday in magnitude, because it's a title decider for all intents and purposes. We had to win that game, and then, then you go on and do our business, and potentially you're looking at a goal difference swing, if nothing else. And so the emotions are there, but I think any talk of sacking the manager right now, I don't think it'd be fair on him personally. And I think you're in danger of a club looking like you just don't know what you're doing, because ultimately it's the board who make these decisions. A year ago, when we brought in Michael Beale, having sacked Van Bronckhorst under very similar circumstances throughout that season, we were all having this conversation about doing, giving him the summer transfer window and stuff and see who he can bring in. That didn't work. Obviously, he brought in the wrong players, but I still stand by that it's the right thing to do, because you can't go on this merry-go-round of managers. You have to stick with somebody, and you have to say, right, now's the time. Because if you look at it, right, one of the biggest problems we've got has been that over the last 6 years, I think Celtic have had 3 permanent managers in that time, where we've had, I think, at least 4, possibly 5. You have to stop that and just make sure you're getting the right point in. I think Clement is that man. I think he needs time to get his players in the door. He's been unlucky that one of the players he did sign, and Cortez, got injured as well. You can't legislate for that sort of stuff. Just seems to be the luck we have. So I'd be sticking with him for now, but undoubtedly next week's a massive game for him, because the only thing we can salvage for this season is winning a cup double, and it's on him to finally get a result against them. That matters, because that's the important thing. Beale got a result against them last year, but it didn't matter. A cup final always matters. I don't care what anybody says, oh, the league's done, they've already won the league and they won't care about it. Of course they'll care about it. It's a cup final against your rivals. It matters. That's a big game. So yeah, I think Chris is right. I would stick with Clement and hope he can do the rebuild that we should have had done last year.
Chris, I'm just going to come back to you. In Glasgow, though, you only stay around long enough if you manage to beat the other side. So if Clement doesn't win the cup final, and then the first Old Firm game of next season is at Parkhead, is he under severe pressure if he doesn't win both of those?
I think, see if he loses both of those, I think we could be having a conversation round about October time looking for another new manager. And I just feel we just can't continue on like that, because what's going to happen is if we bring a new manager in again in October, November, he's just going to inherit another truckload of players that several managers have brought in, and I think that would be a huge. Also, I think with the midfield hardly has any legs, hardly has any energy. That needs to be addressed. Now, you look at Celtic's midfield, everybody's going about how much this rebuild's going to cost. Hatate, O'Reilly and McGregor cost £3 million between them. So it can be done. You can rebuild a midfield for quite a sensible fee if you're smart in the market.
Well, that's a point very well made, Chris. Mark, what's your take on that? Do you think we have to shop smart come the summer?
I think it's imperative that we do. I think that we have no other option than to shop smart. I think that the budget that he's going to get is not going to be anywhere near what it should be. And probably without outside investment, that's never ever going to happen either. So I don't know where they're going to get the money from to do what I believe is a major overhaul in this squad. There's too many people that we spoke about it earlier, resorted to type. For me, a big clear out, I would get rid of a lot of the old guard. I'd get rid of. To be fair, they'll probably be quicker telling you who I'd keep than who I would get rid of, because it would be quicker. But for me, there's a massive overhaul required, and we said that the exact same time last year. So we're pretty much in the exact same position, and our so-called overhaul that we all really get excited about at the start of the season is fell flat on its face, and we're going to need to pull our socks up and do it again. You just hope that with Coppin and Clement that we kind of box a bit cleverer in the market.
Chris, that's a terrific call to kick things off tonight. So thanks very much.
Please give us a call. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye. If you want to be like Chris and get your point across, 0141 628 7237, and we'll bring up as much as your super chats throughout this evening as we can. This one from Locheye the New. Good evening, lads. What an intro, Davey. Gerrard got 3 years to build his title-winning team. We need to be patient with Clement and the new signings when they come in and get behind the team. What's your take on that, Connor? Do you think that new signings are key, but is it as much outgoings as well as incomings, because potentially to generate the funds for a rebuild? Is Jack Butland the prime target for clubs that are willing to spend big money?
I mean, yeah, he's certainly our most valuable sellable asset. There's no getting away from that. I think Jack Butland alone easily can bring you 10, 15 million quid in the baller. I think, obviously, in an ideal world, we'd all like to keep him in place because of how well he's been doing for us. I mean, even against Celtic at the weekend, he saves a penalty, produces a couple of magnificent saves to keep us in it. And I think you've got to say that it certainly bodes ominously if he is to go. But then we do have, weirdly, at this club, a very good tradition of bringing in good goalkeepers. We seem to have a knack for that area of the park. But in terms of the wider point, look, Gerrard did get 3 years, but it was different circumstances for Steven Gerrard than Clement. I think people will understand that he took over at a time where we had obviously came back for the depths, as it were, and got back into the league. The Kashina experiment massively failed, and I think it was understood that with a rookie manager like Steven Gerrard as well, he was going to need to be given time, and I don't think there was an expectation on him coming in that he's going to win the league straight away. Problem is, now we have actually won a league title. We won a couple of years ago, the league title, and we should have kicked on for there. We didn't. Now you're looking at come on and thinking, well, he's got to find a way of wrestling this title back next year, or it's at risk of getting out of hand, because they're already on 3 in a row. If you let them get to 4 in a row and then 5, and then somebody said in the comments they could get to 56 before us. That's an embarrassment if that happens to us. And I know there are factors in terms of titles we've not been in the league to win and coming back up, but take all that out of the equation. At least one of the last 3 titles should have came to Ibrox, and they haven't. So, he's not going to get 3 years, but certainly he's going to get time to bring in his own players, and hopefully, we'll get a few out the door and bring a few in, and that's what it's going to have to be.
So 01416287237 is the number to call. Chris in Dunfermline has called that number. Chris, what's your point this evening?
How you doing, Davey?
No bad, Chris. How's yourself?
Not bad. I'm not surprised with yesterday how it's panned out, because I believe I was on the phone line about three weeks ago. It was Mark and Connor, and basically when I came off the phone, they basically kind of dismissed what I was saying, because I don't blame the manager, I don't blame the players. This is firmly at one place as the board and John Bennett. Because when I came off the call about 3 weeks ago, Connor, and when I came off, Connor says the budget between Rangers and Ross County. But I was actually talking about the budget of Ross County. I was talking about the budget against us and them, because at the end of the day, they're going for 4 in a row. And I did say in the summer, when I was on a call 3 weeks ago, in the summer, our budget was pathetic what we spent on players. And if you actually look at our back 4, if you actually look at how many of their players in the back 4 is probably equal to Vickers. And then if you look at our midfield, on Saturday it was non-existent. Why was it non-existent? Because you're looking at Lundstram, who we got in a free. And if you look at Tarte, Riley and McGregor, we've got no midfielder who's even close to that quality. And I can believe Martin asked Scott a few weeks ago, how do we sort it? Simple. Mathematics. You put some money into it. You put funds into it. And you get better players. How you get better players? By splashing the cash.
Well, Chris, I'm going to take your point to Mark, but Mark, is it not just the fact that spending money? Because last summer we did spend money. It's about spending that money wisely, and I think Michael Beale was entrusted with the largest budget we've ever had since we've been back in the top flight, and he blew it on players that just aren't of the calibre for Rangers.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. I think that our whole strategy needs to change. I think that what we've tried to do was we tried to buy players that have went for more money than what they were going for. In other words, they'd come up to a point, maybe say for talk's sake, like Lammers. I think Lammers went for 6.5 million at one point. and he's no exactly set the heather alight, but we know that he's came for a decent pedigree and he had potential before he signed there. We're trying to nick him for 2.5, 3 million, 3.5 million, and trying to get the best out of him. I think that the days of that, I think we've done that all last summer. I think probably majority of our signings was what we tried to do. I think that the strategy needs to change. I think that your Diamandes and your Corteses, i.e. buying young players that have got potential, that are well thought of, that are in a upward trajectory, and trying to get them in the ground level when you can get them for maybe 3 million, 3.5 million, hoping to nurture them, bring them on, and kind of get them sold on for 10 plus million and stuff like that. I think that's got to be the way we go. Looking like the players that we're kind of getting linked with, and looking at the players that we brought in, i.e. Cortez and Diamande, both are between that 20 and 25 age group, that age bracket. Both are from not exactly obscure leagues, but leagues that aren't exactly top 5, and we're trying to take them, nurture them, make them better, and try and make money that way. And I think that that's the only way we're going to go. But the problem is that us as Rangers fans, are we going to live with that? Are we going to be able to no have a big name, no have somebody that's we all want the finished article, rather than bringing players in that might need a year to kind of get up to speed with the game, Scottish game, and trying to nurture the best out of them. So it's a balancing act, but I think that we need to try and get our mind off that. We're trying to buy the finished article. I think that's the way we're going to be going in future. And listen, a young, talented squad is something that probably we've all been shouting about for years. We've talked about bringing youth through. We'd all love to see homegrown coming through and stuff like that. And for me, that's the only way you're going to go. We've tried over the last God knows how many years to try and buy in success, and it doesn't work unless you start hitting that. As you talked about Carter Vickers, would they pay 9.5 million for the boy? So we're not going to go out and pay 9.5 million for a centre half. So we're never ever going to get a centre half that's as good as that if we don't bring them in cheap, young, and nurture them. That's the only way that's going to happen, because we're not going to fling 9 million at a centre.
Mark David.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you look at their back four, last summer they spent 8 million on 2 centre halves. We spent nothing. If you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, like I said, they spent 8 million on 2 centre halves, and they're going on to. That's what I say to Martin and Mark a few weeks ago. If they don't put the money where their mouth is, you're looking at 8 or 9 years of domination, because that's what's going to happen. Because
well, Chris, can I ask you something? Chris,
yeah, David, on you go.
Is there anybody that you want us to spend that money on? Do you have a player in mind?
Not a player in mind, but if you look at it, if you look at the two, they spent 8 million on centre halves. We spent a pathetic 5 million in the summer. Academy spent overall 15 million, but with 12 million of that back. And like I said, Connor a few weeks ago after Ross County says, because I've fairly said, I don't blame the manager or the players. And then he was comparing Rangers to Ross County budget. But I was saying, I just don't think he might grasp it, because Matt exactly know where I was coming from. But Conrad, I don't think, I'm not comparing the budget to us against Ross County. I'm comparing our budget to them. And they've spent more money. They've spent 40 million on the last 2 years. They're gone for 4 in a row. The last 12 years, they've won 11 titles to our 1. It's plain and simple. If the board do not put the money where their mouth is, they've already got a Tati, Riley, McGregor. Do you think they're going to weaken their team in the summer? Do they think they're not going to get better than what they've already got? So if we don't match what they already got now, I'm not saying what they're going to spend in the summer. If we don't even match what they're going to spend now, you're looking at 9 years of domination. I can mind you well, my wee help goes, if we're not careful, we're going to be the SPL of Scotland. That is exactly where Rangers are at this precise moment. We're second best in every department. Like I said, you look at the back four.
No, I think we've lost Chris there. But that he made some very, thought-provoking points, shall we say, Connor? I mean, what is your take? I mean, I brought up the point earlier that John Bennett has been conspicuous by his absence since he made the comment, a few months after we were in the Europa League final. He said we had assembled the greatest Rangers squad that's ever been built. And that comment has fell flat since, because we haven't won a league title since then, and the trophies that we have won have been sparse. Where is John Bennett? In times gone by, we've had chairmen who have always been at the forefront and certainly have been vocal. Dave King, to a lesser extent, the innocuous Charles Green, and before that, David Murray. What is happening with John Bennett? Why is he sort of, hiding in the wilderness, for a better phrase?
So, firstly, let me just set a couple of things straight there. Because clearly there's been a few things levelled at me for Chris, and that's fair enough. Firstly, just a slight correction, because he said that Carter Vickers cost 9 million. He didn't cost 6 million. Just to clarify that, it was 6 million.
That was me that said that. I think that was me that said that, buddy.
My apologies, I thought it was Chris, but it was 6 million. But anyway, the point still remains. I mean, it's still a good piece of business. I remember what Chris was talking about with that call, right? We had just lost to Ross County, and he was talking about finances and that being part of the reason for why we were losing games like that and we had lost the league. And the point I made at the time is that you can't use finances as an excuse for losing to Ross County in a one-to-one game like that, because they've spent next to nothing comparatively to us. I was not saying that finance isn't a factor when you look at the head-to-head between us and Celtic and obviously competing for the league title, because obviously to compete for the league title, your main competitors are Celtic and you have to try and keep up with that. We did spend money in the summer last year. Michael Beale got given money to spend. He got backed, and he brought in players that weren't good enough. Now, he might say, well, Dessers has got 21 goals for the season, so that proves he was right. It doesn't, because if he was anywhere near the level he should be at, he'd have had at least 30 goals, because the amount of chances he's missed. However, I'm not demeaning the fact he's got 20 goals. We'd been in a worse position without them. But part of it is also, you've got to... One part of it is obviously European money and stuff like that, right? You win the league title, you qualify for Europe, that brings in a pot of money. The other part is a player trading model, and we've been talking for years. Our board level as well have been saying about how we need to go down this player trading model. We need to get players in the door and get them out for good money. We've not done it. Where they have. You look at 3 players, just off the top of my head, in the last couple of years, for them, that they've got big money for, and I'll still get big money on the back of because of selling fees. Kieran Tierney, £25 million. Odsonne Edwards, 16 million quid. Jeremy Frimpong, who looks like he's going to be sold for Leverkusen for about 50 million quid, which means a massive pot of money for them in terms of the selling clause. He went, I believe it was something like 11 or 12 million pounds. We're no selling players often enough for that value. The last player we sold for anywhere near that's Nathan Patterson. We sold for 12 million quid. That's what you've got to do as well. You've got to generate your own revenue by doing that, and we haven't been good enough at that. So absolutely, the board have got questions that need to be answered. And in the summer, we're going to have to try and get as much money as we can for certain players in order to beef up the pot. But look, again, these are the things that your board have to answer. And unfortunately, those are the areas where Celtic have been leaps and bounds ahead of us because they've been doing that. We've been letting players go for nothing because we're running out of contract.
Well, Connor, I'm going to bring in a voice of reason. Loyal Rabble caller, Jim in Kirky, is waiting on the line. Jim, how are we?
I'm fine, boys. I'm all right. Just my call, just listening to what the guys are saying, talking a lot of sense as usual. Absolutely disgusted with the performance on Saturday. But I just want to question, I know it's been, see the actual lineup. The selection was ridiculous. I don't understand, as I say, the Yilmaz how he's no starting, right? And anybody that knows anything about football, we're doing to the bones of our arse, right? You've got to, we're talking about there, the guys are talking there about the Celtic midfield, and rightly so. The last caller was spot on. All the callers have been spot on. So what do you do with that? You try and nullify that. So anybody that knows anything about football, you put Sterling in the middle of the park. You put him in the middle of the park and you play young McCausland outside right. Quite simple. I'm not saying to win the game with that, but you've got yourself a fighting chance. And then centre half. He goes to centre half in the second half. How's young, we're talking about young players, corner again, spot on. How's Leon King? No, getting their, how's he not coming on and play at centre half? What's the point of being on the bench? What's the point of Yilmaz being on the bench if they can't start the game, if they can't play when they're needed? Now, and then my next one is John Lundstram. As I was on this show, I've been on consistently talking about these guys and James Tavernier. Hopeless. Now, he went through, with John Lundstram, there seems to be an element in the Rangers support who thinks when he plays 2 or 3 good games, he should get another 2-year contract or something. Now, it's your job to play well. You're playing for the best club in the world. Do your job properly. It's hopeless. His attitude, I think it was Big Market said that. See, when he put the finger up with that OG, honestly, I was lucky I wasn't buying my 3rd television for this year, because that was a disgrace. Everything about them was a disgrace. So, moving on and being positive, we've still won the League Cup. We won with the Europa League section. We were, I would still say, and I'm going to be, and maybe I'll get slaughtered for it, maybe a couple inches away from beating them. And I'm not just talking about the game, sorry guys, at the weekend. I'm talking about the game at Ibrox as well.
Oh, I think Jim's just lost connection there. Hopefully we can get him back. But Mark, I think he was making, as always, Jim does, some very valid points in regards to, you know, the weekend and Rangers in general. But the lineup, let's start with that. Did the manager get the selection wrong for you? Because I take it back to the Ibrox fixture, where he played the same 3 midfielders in the middle of the park in Lundstram, Diamandi and Lawrence. And we were overran for the first 45 minutes and we were 2-0 down. And, you know, you fast forward to Saturday, we were 2-0 down again. Was the lineup a concern for you?
It was. My biggest thing, and it kind of boils my piss a wee bit, that see if they're fit enough to play. If they're fit enough to be on the bench, they're fit enough to play, as far as I'm concerned. Now, whether it be they're only good for a half, start them. See if they're the better man in that position, start them and take them off at half time. Try and win the game by half time. Try and do a bit of damage before half time. Don't try and consolidate and then try and bring them on to try once the game's away from us. For me, I would have started Yilmaz. Lundstram on form would never have started. I think Raskins had a wee bit of a bum deal, although in all fairness, he's not really performed this season at all. So, but I think that when your centre mid, or your so-called main centre mid, is having a howler, you need to take him out of the firing line and you need to try something different. I understand that he's maybe went, do you know what? I'll maybe stick him in there and he maybe does a turn this game and maybe up his game because it's against Celtic. But for me, see if you're not good enough, you're not playing at a correct standard, then you're out of the team until you show me in training. And then if you get 15 minutes or 20 minutes when you come on, you show me that you're good enough. If you perform, then you will get that shot. And for me, it should never ever have started. Whether you took Sterling and put Sterling at the centre mid slot and never played Lundstram or Raskin is probably another argument. For me as well, I think that we're that threadbare for wingers and stuff like that. I think a bit of running power and a bit of pace is why you put him in the right hand side. He's done a job for us there. So I think he was trying to kind of almost patchwork a team together. But for me, I looked at that and the lineup, and I thought, we're not winning this today. And it's sad. And don't get me wrong as well, a lot of that's to do with the fact that you're struggling for creativity, and wingers struggling for creativity. So for me, it was just a shit show from start to finish, and I think it was always going to be that when you looked at the team selection.
just to let everyone know, we do apologise. Our producers just informed us that the phone lines are down again, so we do apologise for that. But we will continue, so please stay with us. Connor, Mark made some very valid points there. But another point that Jim and Kirky made that I wanted to touch on was that of James Tavernier. Now, this always comes up. This is his 9th season now, or going into his 9th year at the club. In terms of his Old Firm record in particular, he's got a 62% loss rate in this fixture. He's played 37, he's won 9, drawn 5, and lost 23. Now, I grew up watching Rangers in the 9-0 era, and I've seen us nothing but win trophies back to back. I was spoiled growing up. But the Celtic captain at that time was a guy called Paul McStay. Nice guy, decent enough football player, but won very little as captain. And the minute they made that change, that was the changing of the guard for them. And then they saw a bit of success after that. Do we have to cut all ties in respect with James Tavernier and his tenure as Rangers captain? Because for me, it's shrouded in failure, and that cannot continue. We talk about a leadership group, but I grew up again watching a team that any Rangers player in that team could have been captain. You could have Gorham, you could have Laudrup, you could have Gough, you could have McCoy, you could have Bomber Brown. All these guys were fit to wear the armband. Ian Ferguson, Ian Durrant. They talk about this leadership group, but I don't see a leader in amongst any of them. And that, for me, is the biggest concern going forward. What's your take on it?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? You know, we talk about Tav a lot. You know, he comes in for a lot of flack. You'd expect that as Rangers captain. You know, you carry the can for a lot of things. It's part of that role. Some players, as we've seen over the years, you know, the guys you mentioned, guys like Barry Ferguson as well, you know, they relished being in that position and the pressures that came with that. Tav, you know, I think he said moments, you can say, where he's relished it. I think it's undeniable that he's certainly provided some big moments for us in terms of he's scored some big goals. You can't forget that. He's a Europa League Golden Boot winner as a right back for Rangers. You know, 2 years ago, that's unheard of. Rangers strikers don't even get Europa League Golden Boots unless you're Ali McCoist. You know, and yet he's done that. So that's the positive sides of James Tavernier and what he can bring. The issue is that time and again, that mentality side of things when it comes to those big crunch games against Celtic. And look, you can't label every one of those 23 defeats at his door solely and say that's all his fault, because he's also, I think, more than any other Rangers captain, had to deal with a lot of turmoil, a lot of changeover in managers and different players coming in the door. You know, he's had to deal with situations with the likes of Pedro Caixinha, which, you know, doesn't matter who your captain is when you've got a manager like that in charge who's just clueless, and then you've got the Murty situation, and so he's had things that have been out of his control that have gone against him as well. But when you're a captain, you have to be the one sometimes that does step up and steady the ship. I mean, look, we might not like saying it as Rangers fans, but Scott Brown did that for Celtic for best part of a decade. And his time there is trophy leading. Now, yes, again, I'm sure some people would say, well, he had the fortune of Rangers going down, or there was that, but there was still there was still adversity in his time at Celtic that he came out of as well. And Tav just doesn't seem to do that often enough. But you touched on it. If you were to take the armband off James Tavernier tomorrow, who's the ready-made captain to step into the bridge? Because it's not John Lundstram. No, after what he done. Ryan Jack's probably on his way out the door. Do you give it to Jack Butland, your goalkeeper? It's an unusual thing to do. No many goalkeepers that are captains, so it's where you give that armband to. I also think as well, if you bring in players in the summer, it's a bit unfair to just land that at one of their doors. I know last week, I think it was, somebody spoke about Paddy McNair, because he's been linked. He's a guy who's a captain of Northern Ireland, so he's got experience there. But we don't have that leader out weight at the club. But I do agree. I think a changing in the guard probably at some point the next year is needed. You need to hit that reset button and go again. Celtic done that. You look at the season we won the league and things fell apart. The writing was on the wall. Scott Brown knew, Celtic knew, his time was up. But they had the luxury that we don't have. They had a Callum McGregor sitting there, ready, willing and able to take that armband. We don't have that. And that's the concern. That's why Tav is still going to be our captain for at least the next season.
Mark, what's your take on it? You said earlier on in the podcast this evening that it was easier for you to name the players that you wanted to get ready rather than the folk that you thought were going to stay. So does James Tavernier come under that for you? I mean, I know, as Connor's argued, the fact that his goal contributions always count, but I've got a take on this. I think the fact that Tav takes the penalties allows our attacking players to hide. There's nobody that's allowed to step up to the mantle because he's going to always hit every free kick that's within range or every penalty. Does changing him from being the captain allow other players to step up? What's your thoughts?
No, I take that point. I take that point on board. Yeah, I think that's maybe a shout as well. I think that there's probably other players in the group that can hit free kicks, can hit corners, can hit pens. The problem is he's been doing it and he's been scoring them, so that's why he stayed where he stayed. As I said about getting shot of players and stuff like that, for me, what I would do with Tavernier is I think that it's a bit of a slap in the face if you take the captaincy off him in one full swoop. I think probably the season that this season probably going to be I would say his last. His legs are starting to go, but he's been a great servant to the club. So what you do for me is, and what happens at other clubs is, you keep him as captain, but you don't play him as much. I.e., you bring somebody in a replacement, i.e., an understudy. You make somebody else a captain, i.e., a vice captain that is generally the captain. And what you do is when Tav comes on as a sub, you give him a captain's armband for the last 15, 20 minutes or whatever. Use him sparingly. Use him for that kind of, if you need a bit of attacking threat or stuff like that. Because for me, he's not got the legs to get him down the park for a full 90 minutes anymore. So rather than slap him in the face and take it off him, I think that it deserves a wee bit better than that because of the service that he's gave to us. Whether you like him, whether you love him, whether you hate him, doesn't really matter. The boy's scored a phenomenal amount of goals for us. He's pulled us out of the shit many, many, many times. So for me, it's no something that I would have done. You don't a servant like that, you don't slap him in the face by stripping him of captaincy in the twilight of his career. For me, that's just no done. That's no the Rangers' way as far as I'm concerned. So what you do is you ease him out. We've done it with Henderson, didn't they, at Liverpool as well? You ease him out. You bring in young talent that might need a break every now and again. So you maybe plays one game in 3, one game in 4. You bring him on, bits and bobs like that, and you kind of try and bloods a new right back or even Sterling. There's no reason why we can't play Sterling because he's a strange one for you. Sterling's a right side, a right back by trade. That is his trade. So why are we not using him as a right back? I think he'd be a smashing right back. If Tav wasn't there, I think he's ideal. He's powerful. He's pacey. He gets forward. He can defend better than Tavernier. So for me, you don't slap him in the face. I don't think that's right. Although it wouldn't be getting in my team week in, week out. I think that it's time we try and phase him out. Goldson would go. Davies would go. To be fair, I'm probably that away for Suter going as well. Barisic is away. I'd get shot at him. Lundstram would go. Obviously Jack's away. McLaughlin's away. I mean, there's all sorts of good shot. I would get shot. I would sell McCausland. I don't think McCausland should have kicked on, and I think this was his season to kick on. No, he's only going to be a bit part player. He's going to come on for 15 minutes in games if he's here next season. Right, shot at him. I mean, like I said, you'd be quicker saying the ones I'd keep. The ones I'd probably keep: Yilmaz, Diomande, even Cantwell. I think probably Cantwell's run his race was. Lawrence as well. I'd get shot at him and all. I really would. If you can get money for these players and you bring other players in, get shot. I'd keep Big Dessers. Big Dessers would be my second striker or my third striker. I'd bring in another 2 strikers. I mean, you're struggling there. Who else are you going to keep? Really, realistically, Butland probably going to get sold because we need money, because it doesn't grow in trees. People are shouting about we need to spend money on this and that. Where's this money coming from? So, back to the original, swing back right round to the original question. For me, Tavernier would stay as captain. He'd be playing a bit part player, would select a captain, i.e. vice captain, but he really would be our captain and would take it from there. I don't see a problem with Butland. Butland's vocal, leads by example, model professional. I don't see a problem with Butland. For me, Butland, as it stands at the minute, if you look at that squad, probably Butland's the only one that you would give it to, realistically.
No, that's a point that I don't think many people would argue with, Mark. A big thanks to Andrew Lamb for his super chat. He didn't leave a comment, but a big thanks to Andrew for that. So, Connor, I wanted to touch on the manager's presser today because for me, he said a few alarming things, and I don't think we're going to get through them all. And I think it's sort of been the way of his press conferences recently, and he's talking about things like XG and points won and how progress is, the fact that we only lost 2-1 at Parkhead this year and we didn't get beat 3 and 4-0. I thought they were very alarming comments for a Rangers manager, but possibly the most alarming thing that he did say today is we've got 11 players out for Dundee tomorrow. So how do you comprehend that? I mean, for me, our injuries the last 3 or 4 seasons have been ridiculous. And it was much heralded that we brought back Doc Waller to the club because it was seen when he moved away, that's when it started to go wrong. But it's not really improved. And for me, Clement was saying that he's going to make changes in certain departments. He wish he could tell the press right now, but he's going to keep it in-house. Is that aimed at the doctor, or is it the fitness coaches, the physio? Who do you think that was aimed at today?
Probably all of the above. I mean, look, you could bring in Doc Martin. It doesn't seem to matter where our players are concerned right now. The injury list is ever growing. Has been for a while. I think part of it has to be, you have to look at a number of factors, right? Because there's no way on earth that when these players were signed that they all had records of being injured constantly, because you wouldn't sign that many players if they're all injury prone. Undoubtedly, a few of them did have. I mean, Kemar Roof is a classic example. He's somebody who, if we're all being brutally honest, would never be at Rangers if he didn't have the injury record that he's got, because he is a great football player. He's a great striker. His time at Leeds was blighted by injury after injury after injury, and that's what caused him the opportunity to perhaps ply his trade at a higher level down south. And he's came to us, and we've done that with others. So you've got to examine that. It's also, what are we doing in the training ground? Is it that the training sessions are too intense for certain players? Do you need to tailor fit it for certain players at certain degrees? How are you doing the warm-ups? I know that when Phil came in, he was talking about getting a hold of all the medical records for all the players and examining it and going through all this stuff. And he was talking about bringing back things like the ice baths and getting them used properly and all that sort of thing to try and relax the muscles. I don't know if that's been happening or not. Maybe he feels that isn't happening, and maybe that's what he's hinting at there. Maybe he's saying that his physio's only up to the mark, and the doctor isn't doing the things that he needs him to do. That being said, though, I can't see how you would bring in this new approach, this new attitude, and bring in these people and think that in 6 months it's all going to change. It takes longer than that, with players. And there's some players that, is it a psychological thing? Because I feel as if there are certain players that, if they have the slightest wee niggle, won't play. And for me, that's not a good thing at all. Because, I'm not suggesting players should play when they're hurt. But if you've got just a tiny wee niggle, wee bit of cramp or whatever, if you're 80-90% fit, there's no reason why you still can't take part and give an hour or whatever and then come off if you're needed and you're required. So there's definitely that. Of course, what doesn't help Phil is that nobody seems to understand what's happening with the Cantwell situation either, because he seems to, blow hot and cold with him as well. And I wonder if that harms players when they're in and then they're out and then they're in and then it's chop and change and, you have to have stability there. So, clearly, when we have this clear out, a lot of injury-prone players will go. Hopefully, the backroom staff, the physios will be better going forward, and we'll do that. Injuries is a part of football. You're not going to get a season where you don't get any injuries, but certainly you can limit the impact of them and the amount that you get. And I think that's the important part for us to make sure as well in the summer when you're bringing in players, don't bring in players that are injury prone. I mean, I feel sorry for young Cortez. He's one that you absolutely cannot legislate for that. But then that's another question. I'll maybe throw it back to you. That might be an element of when you're bringing in these lads for the continent in particular. Do they understand before they come here the physicality levels in the Scottish game? Are they ready for that when they're thrown straight in for the continent?
Well, I don't think Oscar Cortez had seen a plastic pitch before in his life before he came to Rugby Park, and obviously that's where he picked up his injury. And just touching on that then, Mark, our current record with injuries at the moment, he was a player that we all liked. And I know we've got an option to buy, not an obligation to buy, but the fact that this was such a serious injury, would that make you turn your attentions elsewhere because of the fact we've had so many injury problems on the recent seasons?
I think yes and no. I think that I've seen enough of him to think that it would have been a success here. I think what we spoke about earlier, you need to be clever, you need to box clever in this market. And I think what you do is you go back to them and say, look, we will give you a fee to keep him for another season on loan with an option to buy because of this injury. I think that's what you do. I think that's a clever thing to do. If they come back and say, no, that's not the case, you either buy him or you're not getting him, then I would just say, you know what, no thanks. I don't think we are anywhere near where we can take a kind of £3.5 million gamble in this young boy. It looked apart, and exact same thing as what happens the whole season over, because he's not played for us. We've seen him play, and it gets better. The longer he's out, it gets better. And we go, Cortez. Before the Old Firm game, we're talking about, we're going to miss Cortez. We're going to miss Cortez. Played 4 games for us, and we're talking about we're missing him. That's madness. So I think that whole Rangers thing, where the longer he stays out, and then when they leave us as well, when they go, he was a great player. Well, we need to bring him back. We need to get our head around this. We need to. Somebody said we need to be more ruthless. I agree with that to a certain extent, but we can't be taking £3.5 million gambles on this young boy after seeing 3-4 games. Different if you can get him back in on loan for another year or even 6 months. To say you get 6 months, he's back, he's fit. See how his injury goes, because I mean, look at it. Haji's never been the same player since he got back for that injury. So you think about that. If if it is a similar injury, I'm not sure if it came out exactly what the injury was, but if it's a similar type of injury, it might never be the same player again. So why are we going to fling money at him because he had 4 good games for us and scored a goal? We need to be clever. We need to box clever. So for me, that you say, right, we'll take him on loan another season with an obligation or an option to buy, and if they say no, just say, right, we'll walk away for the deal. Simple as that. We'll look elsewhere. We can't be keeping bringing in injured players and players that we don't know and take gambles on. We can't be doing it anymore.
I think you make a terrific point there, Mark. Connor, if we can turn our attention towards tomorrow night's fixture and then obviously our trip to Tynecastle, we do have an abundance of injuries. But what do we do? Do we try and prepare a formation for the cup final and just put the players that we've got available in that formation just now so the team are regimented before it? Or do we just try and fill a team as best as we can for tomorrow? Obviously, we need to win tomorrow to still technically prevent them from winning the championship tomorrow. So what's your thinking? Do guys like Raskin come back into the fold? We can't well posting in social media and then not being included and then not being used as a substitute. Does he come back in, or is him and Clement finish for you? What would you do tomorrow?
Well, it's a tricky one because obviously, like you say, listen, the league is gone. There's no denying that. But certainly, you don't want them mathematically getting over the line because we've no done their jobs. That happened to us a couple of seasons ago when they went up to Tannadice and drew and that won us the league. So we need to make sure, above all else, get the 3 points tomorrow, and then, you know, if they're going to win the league on Wednesday night, then so be it. They're going to have to go and actually win that game to do that. So I think you put out the strongest 11 you can tomorrow. If he's got, I say if because I'm not sure if he will or not, but if he's got a formation in his mind or a tactic in his mind that he's thinking of using get into the cup final, then by all means give it a try if he thinks it can work tomorrow. I'm not sure what that would be, right enough. I think one of the things we will get to see that could be a positive, obviously with the amount of injuries we've got is an issue, but with John Lundstram being suspended, of course, I think we'll get to see Raskin probably start tomorrow. I would imagine he'll certainly get a lot more game time if he doesn't start. He might start Lawrence and then bring Raskin on, but that'll give him an opportunity to show, you know, what he's got and maybe make a case, because I think, you know, for most of us sitting here, I don't think any of us want to see John Lundstram back on a Rangers team sheet ever again. But that only happens ultimately if A, the players that can fill that position can stay fit, and B, that they're showing that they can perform in the next 2 games. So that's where we're going to have to be at. Look, that's all you can do now. I think if we can win those 2 games left in the league and then just get that out of the way and focus on the big game, you know, a week from Sunday, and hope among hope that you can at least end the season on that high of winning the cup. But I appreciate the league's the most important thing, and you would swap a League Cup and a Scottish Cup for the league title every day of the week. But it's not often you find yourself in this situation where you've pretty much blown the league, but you've got an opportunity against your big rivals to still clinch a piece of silverware and go home with 2 trophies for the season, which, if we're all being honest with how we've been this season, in and of itself would be slightly daylight robbery for us to win 2 trophies this year. But that's all we can do, and then it's your building block for the future. It's as simple as that, really.
Well, just before we go this evening, I'll get a quick prediction from the 2 guys. Mark, I'll come to you first. Rangers against Dundee at Ibrox tomorrow night. How are you calling it?
2-0 Rangers, Dessert first scorer.
And Connor, you get any better than that?
3-1 Rangers and Fabio Silva first scorer, just to be different, because it'll probably be Dessers, but I might as well say somebody else.
Well, my thanks to Connor and Mark for joining me on the podcast this evening. My thanks to everybody in the comments. Please like, share, subscribe rather. Tell all your friends about us. I think I just swallowed my teeth towards the end of the podcast. And join Martin and the guys tomorrow for post-match reaction. Due to the kick-off and that, and the guys working this week, there will be no pre-match. So join us for the post-match reaction tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Good night.